Hey y'all, it's your boy Danny from the Yugi Mayhem Bros here, and I just want to wish you all a happy Halloween. It's almost Halloween anyway. I'm probably gonna upload this tonight, the day that I'm filming it. So get at your boy. Like, comment, subscribe, and go ahead and donate to the Patreon. All that good stuff. You already know what it is. So this deck, if you hadn't seen the thumbnail, is Darkest Diabolos Remix 2.0. So this is the 2.0 version. There's one proxy card in here. I'll explain it when I get to it. But for the most part, I wanted to explain my card choices and explain the deck a little bit better. So we're going to go ahead and start off. We're going to steamroll right into things by playing triple of the boss monster, Darkest Diabolos himself. I want to play 3 of him because some would argue that you only need 1. Others would say 2. For me, in this version of the deck, I tribute a lot, so I want 3. He's not always a dead draw, but he can be a dead draw. But that's why you play things like Lair of Darkness. So basically, when you tribute a card and he's in your hand, or if he's in your graveyard, he can be special summoned out, but not during the damage step. And then, let me read his second effect. You contribute 1 dark monster. Your opponent places 1 card from their hand, either the top or the bottom of their deck. So it's a pretty powerful disruption effect. The whole premise of this deck is Shock, Lock, and Awe. And it's really made to troll your opponent and to gauge your opponent. It's a good deck to test the mindset of your opponent to see. So if you have friends that you want to play against to test, this is a good deck to test against. It kind of has premises of every deck that's in the format. It plays a lot of traps, and a lot of trap heavy decks are stun based decks and control based decks, and this is really what a control based deck is, like, at the end of the day. I built mine more geared towards the whole testing premise of wanting to get inside my opponent's mind, so that's why I play the cards that I do. Up next I have 3 Lilith, Lady of Lament. So she's like the turbo of this deck, like I said in my last profile. She will go ahead and turbo out your trap cards, and she will really make it hard for your opponent to play this game. There's trap cards in here that that will really shock your opponent and really lock them out of the game and really leave them awed. Sorry. But anyway, so she can tribute a dark monster, and when she tributes a dark monster, you can reveal 3 normal trap cards, and your opponent randomly picks one, and then you set it onto your field. So you want to play mind games with your opponent, you want to lock your opponent out, you want to do whatever you can to see what your opponent has in store for you. I finally got to do a little bit of testing against Thunder Dragon, some minor testing. I say minor because the Thunder Dragon deck I was testing against wasn't complete, and it wasn't pure Thunder Dragons at that. It was Invoked Thunder Dragons. So the Mechabas had nothing to do against traps because they play very little traps, I noticed. They put up a good fight, but there's a lot of things that Titan and Colossus couldn't do against this deck. There's a lot of things that they could do, but there's a lot of things that they couldn't do as well. There's a lot of plays that they couldn't make normally, that they had to play around my traps, and they had to play around protecting themselves in different ways because of the tribute effect. Sky Strikers, this deck is no problem. You have funny plays against Sky Strikers. You tribute off their Ray beforehand, and they can't do anything about it really, because you're a quick effect. You tribute off their what's her name? The fire one. You tribute off the fire one. No, not the fire one. The one that lets you get a spell from deck. The water one. Whatever her name is. Forgive me for those who are religious Sky Striker players. She doesn't get her effect off when you tribute her as cost. I may be wrong on that ruling, but as far as we were testing out to see, that's what they were telling us. So, anyway, continuing on with the deck profile. I play still 3 Arima, the Wicked Warden. He's your terraforming. I don't play terraforming of this build because of Thunder Dragons, basically, and because of Mechabuzz running around, and because of the popularity of those. I just found it better to play around the idea. I mean, at the end of the day, a Mechabuzz can still stop Arima, but I think I'd rather them waste a monster than them waste a spell. Honestly, like, just being honest. Arima, for those who don't know, contribute a dark monster, and then you get to draw a card, or you can pitch Arima and add the Lair of Darkness from your deck to your hand. Up next, I play 2 Armageddon Knights because I like dumping my Darkest Diabolos. I took one out, and I don't know. I'm liking the idea of it, of taking one out, because he's a tribute target because he's a dark. But I don't know. I may put a 3rd back in just to test it out. I may even take this card out because pretty soon I'm gonna take out one of the Diaboloses. So anyway. Up next is the cards where I was going to talk about my proxies. So I'm playing an Artifact Engine where one should be a Scythe. I want to play 1 Scythe and 2 Moral Tech. And usually it's the other way around. Usually you want to play 2 Scythes and 1 Moral Tech. But I really like the idea of popping a card on my opponent's side of the field, or setting this and not having my opponent, having my opponent be afraid to pop my back row because, like, oh wait, it's a Moral Tech, or oh wait, it's a Scythe. And that's the idea behind the artifacts, is shocking the opponent, is making it so that it's harder for them to play the game, making it so that it's harder for them to guess, and make it so that they have to second guess their choices. I want to play just the 1 Scythe though. I just want to test it out. I wasn't playing with a Scythe at all, and the deck was working out pretty well. So maybe in my 2.1 version remix of this deck, I'll put a Scythe in. I'm not sure yet. I'm not sure where this deck is gonna go from here, but I like how it plays, I like how it feels, and I like some of the aspects of the deck. And as for my last 2 monsters, I'm playing 2 Gamma Seals. I want to play 2 more Kaijus. I just can't decide which Kaijus I want, whether I want smaller Kaijus or bigger Kaijus, or if I want a Fiend Kaiju already or not. But for the most part, I want the Gamma Seal just as a quick tribute over my opponent's monster when Lair of Darkness is on the field, and so I can get the effect off and possibly get Diabolos back on the field. So up next for my spells, we have 2 Called by the Graves. I originally, I wasn't playing Called by the Grave, and I was testing out Called by the Grave in this deck. It works out very well, and it has a stun potential. And I use it more as a stun card and more as a surprise card for my opponent. Whereas everybody knows you're playing Called by the Grave because it's 2018, about to be 2019. You're gonna play Called by the Grave. You hate hand traps, but this deck isn't afraid of hand traps. This deck is more worried about your combo pieces that you're sending to grave. So when you're trying to go off, we have answers to your combos. So you play this more as a combo stopper than an extender of any kind of your own. Like, you're not trying to stop hand traps with this card. You're trying to stop your opponent's plays more or less. I play one Monster Reborn. I never explain Monster Reborn. It's a good card. It's a free monster. I don't see why not to play it. Just play it. I play one Soul Charge. Some would say that in this modern day and age, Soul Charge isn't good, but you can make a big push and make a big comeback with Soul Charge. There's just there's no doubt in my mind that Soul Charge is still a good card. Up next for my draw cards, I play 2 Pots of Duality. Because this deck isn't always special summoning, it's usually special summoning on your opponent's turn. And you don't really always want to special summon on your turn anyway. Like, you're probably gonna set spells or set spells. What am I saying? You're gonna set your traps and get your trap lineup going and get it steamrolling so that you can chug along through your opponent's defenses. If your opponent even has defenses, a lot of decks nowadays don't play defense, they just play offense. I'm looking at you, Cyber Dragons. Then as for my draw power as well, I added a third Lair of Darkness. Everybody knows that Lair of Darkness is my favorite card. I was originally playing 2, I added a third. I like the third because I can just get rid of one of my Diaboloses. I can get rid of one of my dead Armageddon Knights, one of my Arimas. The thing I just don't want to lose are my Liliths, but at the same time, if I have to get rid of a Lilith, it's not like it's gonna hinder me too much. Up next is 3 Lair of Darknesses, which in my last video I talked about how you could play 2 Lair of Darkness and 1 Terraforming. I don't think that to be true after testing against Thunder Dragons, just because of how Thunder Dragons play. I don't think that to be the case anymore. I think you have to hard draw this card. I think you want to hard draw this card. You don't want it in multiples, but you kind of need it in multiples. If your opponent's going to start popping things off with Twin Twisters or anything, this has got the biggest target on its head, because they're going to be more afraid to pop your back row than they are to pop your field spells, basically. So that's my spell lineup, that's my monster lineup. Let me go into the traps. The traps are interesting, I guess. Question mark. I started playing different spells. Originally I was playing 3 Grinning Grave, but I'm playing 2 now, and you may think to yourself, you may turn the video off here and say Grinning Grave is the worst of the viruses ever printed. Well, it's not. Believe me, you always want a tribute. You always want something to tribute with this deck. It's because of Diabolos and because of how many Diaboloses you play. Because you play 30, you always want to tribute something. And this card allows you to always tribute something. It always requires a tribute. There's other cards you could play, and I'm going to go ahead and tell you right now that you don't have to follow this exact build. Just use it as a skeleton to get into your other combo potential, other combo plays, other whatever, you know, just go for it. Just try it out, and try something. Up next, another interesting card, new idea to the deck is 2 Phantom Wings, 2 Phantom Knight Wings. So my idea behind this is throw up a Grinning Grave, an Eradicator and a Wings, and your opponent is either going to see you're making a push or you're going to be making a stance. And if you're making a stance, you're going to play this card and you're going to defend, and you're going to want this card to defend, and you're going to want it to keep something alive, to keep one of your monsters alive, to help and hold the front line against your opponent's monsters, basically. And the same idea is behind Grinning Grave. Grinning Grave is for offense, Wings are for defense, and then these are for destroying my opponent. Eradicator and Full Force. Full Force will outright kill Gokis, any Goki player that remains. Sorry, Gibbles, if you're watching this. It outright destroys any Goki deck. It outright destroys just about any Sky Striker deck I've seen anyway. Eradicator destroys any Sky Striker deck. It can potentially shut down Thunder Dragons, potentially. It can cripple, just cripple, not destroy. What's that deck? Danger. It can cripple Danger, like getting rid of some of their back row, some of their combo pieces. But you play these cards to rattle your opponent. So if we go back and if we had to take a test on what we're doing here, this is offense, this is defense, and then this is special ability, if I had to give it a name. And then up next, we have the 3 Torrential Tributes. This is for full-on what I call digging with your opponent. And when you dig with your opponent, you set up 3 Torrential Tributes, so that you always set a Torrential Tribute, and your opponent always has the fear of God in them because of hello, Torrential Tribute. But at the same time, you don't have to play like that. Like, you can do other things. Whereas I'm learning that setting up 3 Sanctums can be just as bad as 3 Torrential Tributes for your opponent. Sanctum is very powerful, and when your opponent thinks you have Sanctum, they're less likely to try and pop your back row. They're more likely to play around it, and this is the whole aspect of getting inside your opponent's head. So with these cards, what I think anyway, you can skillfully and tastefully and also somewhat degenerately get into your opponent's head and play out their deck and test how strong their deck is and the potential of their deck, to see where they're at or see where they're going, see what they're trying to do. You can play any traps you want, but if I had to give traps a shot, I'd say Sanctum, Wings, Torrential Tribute, Eradicator, Full Force. If you want, you could even take out the 2 Grinning Grave for 3 Full Forces, and I think that doesn't hurt the deck at all. I think that speeds things up quite a bit and gives it a little bit more of a destruction factor. Just some notes about this deck when you're playing against it, if you want to try and beat it better. Stop Diabolos preemptively. Don't let your opponent get the Diabolos off, because it's a free body. It literally is a free body. Stop their Liliths however you can, but be careful, because tributing is a cost, and You have to pay costs. I mean, everybody knows that. Stop the little however you can, but be wary, be careful, because as long as a card is tributed, its effect doesn't have to go off for you to get off and resolve Diabolos. It's just as long as it's tributed. Watch out for the Arimas. The Arimas will sneak up on you, and a lot of times I see people tributing over their opponent's monsters just to get a quick draw off of them. The artifacts will hurt, and the artifacts will sneak up on you as well. Remember what you're playing against. Remember, if your opponent starts setting up a lot of back row, remember, be careful out there, because there are decks playing the artifact engine. Lair of Darkness is not to be laughed at. It's not to be taken lightly. At one point they thought this was going to be a meta-defining deck, but it wasn't. But I think now it can be with the current meta that exists. I think you can take this to regionals, and I think it can perform well in high tier events. As for an extra deck, I don't have one prepared. With this deck, I never want to play an extra deck. It's kind of like Cleaforts. I'll just put a bunch of random crap in an extra deck, and I will put it face up and leave it face up so my opponent thinks I'm playing something like, I don't know, what do I have here? Like Salmon Greats, for instance. Like, I'll leave that face up, and my opponent will think, oh, he's playing Salmon Greats. Anyway, continuing on with the profile, Lair of Darkness is powerful, it's strong, it's here, it's gonna be a contender. I think it's gonna be a contender. Or it can be a contender, at least within the right hands and within the right skilled player. Keep in mind, you can't tribute over Diabolos, so you can't Kaiju Diabolos. As for my final thoughts on the deck, I think it has everything it needs, and I'm sorry I'm making this long-winded. I just wanted to go more in depth about the deck and talk more about what was at hand. Play what you want, try what you want, do what you want, but one thing that I would not go into the current format without is Sanctum and Torrential Tribute by my side. Like, I think I need those two cards at least to prepare for the upcoming format. And remember, people, always have your tokens ready, because this deck is a token deck. It takes a lot of tokens and whatnot. But anyway, like, comment, and subscribe, and holla at your boy. Catch me on turn 2.